Right, and we are pleased to be joined by none other than the pride of Framingham, Massachusetts, the biggest town in Massachusetts until it became a city. Now it's technically a city, Framingham, Mass.
Yep.
It's sweet Louuuuu Maloney. Lou, what's going on, man? Thanks for coming on to the show.
Oh, anytime, guys. Talk Sox anytime. We're all just sitting around waiting for something to happen.
Like for the shoe to drop, like you had mentioned. Now, before we begin, two quick notes. Number one, shout out to Billy, listener to the show, at blimp_Sox, who on November 15th tweeted at you, Lou, to go on Pod on Lansdowne. I don't even know if you had seen us on the radar, but you agreed right away. You DM'd us and said, anytime, absolutely.
Yeah, like I said, I mean, I can literally. My wife is sick and tired of me talking Sox to her. She has no clue
me and you both
what's going on. I started talking about out of nowhere. Last night we were sitting around. We had a 30-minute conversation about Heim, because she's like, so wait, isn't this what he was asked to do? Build the system? I'm like, it's deeper than that. So, and then we got into another. She's probably like, can you just go talk to somebody else about this? I'm like, I am tomorrow night. So we were.
There you go. It works out. It's a good outlet for all of us to do that. So that's the first thing I wanted to mention. The second thing is that this is actually the second interaction that I've had speaking with you one-on-one. There was a time probably around 2010 when I was a wee lad. I was, I'd be 14 years old.
Yeah.
You know that ramp right at the corner of Jersey Street now to go up to the media? At 14 years old, my dad said, hey, shout to that guy, say, Utility Lou! So I went and I yelled, Utility Lou! And you quickly looked behind, you waved, and you made it on your way. And it made my day as I was going into the game. So
I waved, and you're like, wait, Dad, who's Utility Lou?
Right? He's like, he's a Lou Maloney, old player from when you were like a baby there. But again, thank you so much for coming on to the show. Lou, we could sit here, and I'm sure we will get into some of the specifics of all of the rumors. I mean, obviously the Juan Soto sweepstakes, the Red Sox seem like they at least have, some chips at the table there. Whatever happens there on that front, who knows? Obviously the pitching market, the Red Sox are in on it. You name it, your Crochets, your Frieds, Corbin Burns, Blake Snell, whoever it might be, right-handed help. I mean, now there's whispers that potentially there's a possibility that Nolan Arenado could be making his way to Boston. All of that stuff, and throughout this entire process, Lou, this year and in years past, and you kind of were just getting into that mood now. You just are so psyched about talking ball, which I appreciate in general. Before we get into the specifics, I just want the audience to be appreciative of that you are stoked about this, and again, you're talking your wife's ear off about this shit. We appreciate that here over on Pod on Lansdowne.
Well, because it's you kind of had that feeling last year, right, when you saw Full Throttle. When you heard that, you're like, oh boy, here we go. And then quickly, within a couple weeks, agents and national guys were like, yeah, no, it's not Full Throttle. Okay, we're hearing they're out on everybody. This year is different. You mentioned the Soto thing. I expected after this thing kind of 3 weeks ago got some steam, that they were going to have a meeting. By now, I thought it would sort of just fizzle out. Well, really, it's not going to happen. It's going to go to the Mets, or maybe Mets or Yankees. But it really hasn't. It hasn't fizzled. So, but it's still kind of like a back burner thing for me, right? I'm still not in emotionally that he's coming here. Right? Because I still don't see it happening. So it's don't let this make us lose focus on what is really needed. And that is two starters, and a couple high leverage guys in that back end of that bullpen. To me, those are the top priorities. So, but you keep hearing it. It's national guys repeating it. It's agents repeating it, that these guys are ready to spend again. And that's exciting. It's nice.
Yeah, friend of the program, Bob Nightingale, throwing us into that as well. That the Red Sox might get two of those three between the Burns, Fried, and Snell. So what were you going to say there, Liam?
I was going to say, Lou, you mentioned it. Pitching's the priority, and I feel like the last 48 hours we're having these conversations about Devers and Casas, and I just feel like we're missing the forest for the trees, so to speak. I'm like, it feels like a complete distraction when really we should be focused on the bullpen, and we should be focused on two starters. So the whole Arenado conversation, we can get into it a little bit if we really want. But for me, I'm kind of all in on Snell and Crochet at this point with the swing and miss stuff. So I don't know where you're at. If you had to pick two out of the big guys that are available.
Yes, I'm with you because Corbin Burns is the biggest no-brainer though, right? As far as 200 innings. Now we know that there's some slippage in swing and miss, and And I get it, but still, you get that guy, for the next 2 or 3 years, 4 years, whatever, he's going to be on top of that rotation, get the big games, and be effective. But when you look at from day one, last offseason, Breslow got here, he started talking about with Andrew Bailey. And the first thing out of his mouth, and continues to be out of his mouth, is swing and miss in the zone. Like, period. And so you're sort of dealt a hand last year of, okay, this is what we got. Do we have any swing and miss? Not much, right? We got Nick Pivetta. You know what I mean? Like, and we're going to QO him, and he's going to go. So we got Cutter Crawford, his fastball at times, whatever. In the bullpen, what do we got? Any swing and miss? Not much. But this is what we get to deal with. So I think those are the areas of focus. And when you start looking at the free agents, Snell and Crochet jump off the page. We start looking in the bullpen, guys like Hoffman and Tanner Scott jump off the page. There are a few others, the older guys, right? Like Yates and Robertson. But to me, that's why I kind of look at swing and miss stuff. Now, it doesn't mean that they're not interested in Burns or Max Fried. Like, Fried's swing and miss stuff in his zone is not non-existent, but it's not very high compared to anybody else. He's a ground ball.
It's not his bread and butter. He's a wicked ground ball
but
pitcher.
He's still a good pitcher. Trust me. I'll take all of them. But you mentioned it, Liam. Like, to me, Crochet makes your offseason. Because if you do go get one of these other guys and you compare him with Crochet, lights out.
Now, so my whole hang-up with Crochet has been the workload. Do you see him as a guy that, you make the deal for him, so you move Abreu, some other pieces to get him. Do you trust him off the bat to give you, say, I don't know, 170 innings next year?
Are we trust level as far as like betting my child's life?
I would say just how comfortable
the wager here. It's your
the dogs maybe the dogs life.
Not the dogs.
Dog. Okay, so we
don't get the dog walking videos if that doesn't hit, so we can't risk that.
I would say that's obviously the red flag, but there's good reason. It's funny because I would say that as far as durability and what you can count on, there's more of a track record of Blake Snell saying you can't. You know what I mean? It's 130, 140 innings. This guy gave you 1 year of 140 innings, and it was capped strictly because of what he's gone through his whole career. He got drafted right into the bullpen, had a healthy season in the bullpen. Then it was Tommy John, and they said, we're going to put you in the rotation. And at 100 innings in July 1st, he was one of the most dominant pitchers in baseball. He was on a 2-month run that looked like schoolboy. But they knew they couldn't keep it up, right? So they started going 3 innings at a whack. So, it's an unknown. There's no question about it. But 145 innings is a nice foundation year. You know what I mean? Like, that tells me you can push him to 165, 180 in that range. So no, I don't trust it. But he's very similar to Snell in that swing and miss is through the roof. The upside is through the roof. But neither one of them are durable as much as you would say Burns and even Fried to a point.
Well, Lou, I'll ask you that. I mean, while we're on the Crochet topic, I mean, the $1 million question is, what are you? I guess there's 2 parts. What do you think he'll cost, and what are you comfortable with sending out if that's going to be your guy?
See, I kind of made the mistake of jumping in on the Dylan Cease deal and start looking at that and comparable because the problem with that deal was that it was in February, end of February.
Yeah,
and at that point, all it takes is 1 or 2 teams that would be interested to bow out because they've already set their team through free agency. Mm-hmm. Now that every team has the opportunity to go through an entire offseason, even August and September, thinking about the Crochet deal, it's going to cost you more. You know what I mean? It's going to cost you more. And I'm not sold that Abreu's the headliner. I'm not. I saw some report. Who was it today? Jim Bowden.
McAdams said last week as well.
Yeah.
Or 2 weeks ago that it was that the White Sox were interested and he could be a headliner, but those were the 2 I saw. Yeah.
Right, but Bowden today, I think in some mailbag.
So Casas, Abreu, and Wong.
Casas, Abreu, and
Wong
Wong
the conversation.
Could it started like.
Yeah.
Dude, what are you smoking crack? I ain't doing
I read that earlier today myself. I was taken aback by it.
I don't know what we're talking about here. Yeah.
I understand, fans of their own teams, just by nature, any team, any sport, you name it, any of their young prospects or up and coming stars, they're gonna be more protective of that. They're gonna think there's more value to it. Yeah. But I think any rational thinking, just baseball fan in general, as good as Crochet is, those 3 in a deal as to just to get a seat at the table, that's a bit ridiculous.
It is, and Costas really tilts it, right? But I mean, so the report of Abreu leading it, to me, I don't I don't see that. I think there's more involved because now that you get all these teams involved, all it takes is one. And Dombrowski is a perfect example of a guy that's like, I'm willing to include our number 1 prospect or our number 2 prospect. Now you've got 4 higher than a lot of other teams, but I don't see how you're going to get away with that. You know what I mean? So if it is, I think Campbell and Anthony are untouchable. Does Meyer come into play? Does Teal come into play? Take the place of a guy like Abreu, included with a guy like Abreu. But I think that's the kind of area you need to be comfortable with to get this guy, because I just don't see Abreu. And this is the thing, like some people are like Abreu and they name like 3 guys behind him, behind the top 5. And people are like, no, I wouldn't do that deal. He's only got 2 years left. It's going to look ridiculous when you actually find out what the real cost probably could be, because of course you would do that deal with Abreu headlining it. You would do it in a second and bring this guy on.
Now, for Crochet specifically, you've used the term pig for starters. Would you call Crochet a pig? Define a pig for us. What makes a pig and what makes a pig not here?
Yeah, well, I would put he and Snell are pigs.
Pigs, okay. Jot this down, folks.
Yeah, well, because they're filthy. Like pigs are filthy. And somebody be like, actually, pig is a very clean animal. And I'm like, whatever, dude, it's filth. And I just think that they are. Scooble's a pig. You know what I mean? Like, these guys are pigs. And to be honest with you, a lot of aces are just pigs. They take the mound, and then you got your other side. You got your werewolves. You know what I mean? So that's another one. Like, a Pavetta to me is like a werewolf on the mound. Like, he's nuts, So
you don't know what you're going to get.
Yeah, he's just crazy. He's out there screaming at everybody, whatever it takes. But, Snell, Crochet. Well, I re-rolled in there in June 7th, and I actually looked at, like the game book that I had because, of all the games I did. And just like the notes I had on Crochet, and it was gross. I mean, it was because the numbers sort of dropped a little bit. At the time, he had the 99th percentile fastball in the game. The numbers were ridiculous. Swing and miss. Lefties didn't touch him. At the time, only 1 extra base hit. And now I think it dropped to like the 95th percentile fastball, right? So,
massive drop.
Right. So the second half, the numbers did drop a little bit. But the numbers were through the roof. He was on like an 8-game run where the ERA was 100. The batting average against was $1.25. Like, it was just like, holy shit. And he looked like it. They got to him a little bit, but then he settled down.
Was that the series we split with the White Sox?
That sounds about right.
Yeah.
He actually threw the game that, if you remember, Duran hit a triple but missed first. And then appeal, that was him on the mound. He threw it away. He threw it to shitter at first.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Okay.
It's all coming back now.
They had to scratch and claw just to get that split on that Sunday. Yeah. I remember that. Yeah. That was fun. Then they went on the nice little run, and then we thought, maybe this is gonna be a special season. Then it wasn't. Then it wasn't. How about on the other side, Lou? Have you heard you as a member of the media, have you heard any whispers of any shakeups happening on the offensive / infield, outfield layout? Any right-handed bats that are striking your fancy? Anything in those regards to this point as we record here?
I haven't really heard anything with any of these guys. They're pretty tight-lipped, and that's probably the way it should be because, again, you mentioned, we were talking before about I think Sean McAdam had like this Arenado report, right? And how internally there's been discussions of moving Devers. Like, that opens up everything, right? Because, people say, well, that's perfect. Bring him in, put Devers at DH. I don't think the move Devers is necessarily DH. I think it would be to first base, which opens up like, okay, then what happens to Casas, right? So I mentioned that earlier because I always play it off of like that Ken Rosenthal article, wherever it was in September. Mid-September, that I don't think Ken Rosenthal woke up out of bed and said, I wonder if the Red Sox would think of trading Devers and move Casas, rather move Devers and bring in Adames. Like, I think that was somebody talked to him about that. You've heard it now from Heyman, and now you got Sean McAdam. So I think that kind of stuff could be in play. I'm not saying they should or they need to or whatever, but there's obviously a willingness to get maybe whatever they might need in return, maybe a pitcher. I don't know. It does sound like Abreu. If you're going to bring in, the thing is this: nobody wants to trade anybody, but the Red Sox right now have a starting lineup. They have Wong, they have Casas, they do have Grissom and Campbell, they have Story, Devers. Their outfield set, defensively fantastic, right? With Cedon and Abreu and Devers and Yoshida. But it's like, okay, well, how do you get better if you don't trade away a couple guys? How do you make more contact if you don't get rid of guys that swing and miss? Like, how do you do it? You bring in a right-handed bat. Well, who goes? Someone's got to go. And if that's the case, that's why I think Abreu's name comes up a lot. There's some swing and miss there. Great player, good value now. Plus, you got a lefty and Roman Anthony behind him. But you build your outfield. with a right-handed bat, and when Anthony pushes through the door to get to the big leagues, he does.
Well, so Lou, we've had the three of us have talked this through ad nauseum as far as
Our listeners are probably sick of it.
yeah, if you're gonna trade the options you have that have high value, that aren't the big four prospects or any of those. So like it's pretty much there was it was Jen McCaffrey today. The three guys. It's like Duran, Abreu, Casas. So for me, I think trading Casas right now just flat out doesn't make a ton of sense as far as his value. Like he missed a very large portion of last year. If you're gonna capitalize on, I mean, we saw him 2 years ago. Like he's a special talent.
Yeah.
And I just think if that is a guy that you're thinking not part of the long term, even wait to like the deadline or something. So that just doesn't make sense to me. But then as for Duran, we've said this. You know, if a team, he was the Red Sox best player last year, pretty clearly. I just don't know as far as the optics work for that. Like who would you have to get coming back for the fans to not be pretty pissed off that you traded Duran, who was your best player in a fairly miserable year, which basically leaves you with Abreu.
Like, whoever it is better be in contention for the Cy Young.
That's exactly.
Right.
Which
What,
pretty much
Duran
leaves
was
you
like a 7-WAR player.
Yeah.
This past year.
It's like almost 8. Yeah.
There you go. Right.
It's crazy. Yeah.
Because
and so then you end up on Abreu, and that's kind of
I'm a no.
That's kind of it.
Yeah, I'm a no on trading Duran. You know, and all these same people right now that are like, you know, trade him because his value is high. I think the minute you trade him, it turns into another Mookie discussion. I'm not comparing the two and who they could be, but it's like, why do we take some of our greatest players?
Exactly, that's what I'm saying. Yeah,
4 years and move them. Like everyone's like, well, I think the value's never been higher. And it's like, well, hold on, what if this is who he is? Like, what are you doing? Like, what?
At
if,
least through the life of his
what if he
control,
is good?
Right?
You know, he
Right.
yeah.
I mean, it's 4 years. Like I said, through the arbitration years, it's probably $50 million. So you couldn't get him for 4 years, $50 million right now. And you know, everyone's like a 1 year wonder. It's not a 1 year wonder. Last year, before he went on the IL there in the end of August,
He was good in 23.
Yeah, before he hurt himself
Absolutely.
in Yankee Stadium, looked like the same exact guy.
It's the same dude. The difference was, as Cora said this many times, is that this year it was the more power, like more bats than like legs producing extra base hits. Like there were more triples driven and more home runs. But last year there were a million doubles because of his legs. You know what I mean? So it was when you look at the end numbers, they're very similar. Like this is, I think, who he is.
I think his
And it's like,
defense
why would you
too
get rid of that?
makes it. I mean, he took a massive leap defensively.
Yeah, he was
which
a great
is not.
defender this
That's
past year.
not nothing. Like he was really bad those first couple of years. Like the
21
fact,
and 22.
not every guy does
There's a mess
that.
out
I mean,
there.
it's.
You know,
That's
I
only when he
said-
was running after the balls. If he was walking after the balls, forget it on defense for Durant. Right?
And I think that plays a role. And I've said it before. Like, you know, you only get one time to make a first impression. You know, I think people still remember that. They remember year one, how he just couldn't hit, and he was maybe worse in the field. Right, swinging and missing at the plate, anything over the belt, fastball, and really bad defensively. People still have that in their minds. So when they see what he's doing now, they're not buying it. And I just think we got to get past
The
that.
dude was All-Star Game MVP. Like he's not some scrub, and yeah.
Yeah.
He's
Was
a
it
werewolf.
I
eighth in
agree.
MVP voting? And
Eighth.
you could
Yeah.
contend that
I'll take it.
maybe should have been bumped up even a little bit
I
higher.
thought he should have been higher than that. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Lou, obviously these are some great points being made. I wanted to slightly shift gears with this question here. It just is something that I'm interested in hearing from you about. Obviously, you're in the unique position of having the MLB experience, baseball playing experience, now transitioning into the media. Well, not that you're now transitioning to media. You've been part of it for some time now. But in those years in media, how has your playing experience informed your analysis in situations like this when trying to evaluate, what targets the Red Sox could be going after in an offseason like this?
Well, I think as far as like what targets, and honestly, that's one of the things that may concern me a little bit about Snell. Because I do believe it takes a special guy to, player to play here. And, I don't know how big of a concern it would be, and only time would tell, but I don't think the David Price experience went very well, and there seems to be a touch of David Price in him as far as that, like the way he addresses and talks to the medias and everything, whatever it may be. Maybe I'm completely off base, but I do think that's real. I think some guys love playing here. They flourish playing here, and those guys you want to try to hold on. Now we've done not so good of a job the last 2 years trying to hold on to those guys, right? Like it's true, like because to me, like Schwarber was like could handle it. Turner could handle it. There's
Schwarber's the one that got away
God,
these last
Schwarber
2 years
hurts
for me.
every time I look.
Yeah.
So I think that like just the experience of dealing with the scrutiny, around here, so the playing stuff is more of what's going through the player's mind, like within a game or when he's slumping, what he's feeling, because I've been there many times, or defensively when he's slumping or going well, what that feels like, those sort of things. But as far as team building goes, it's more of trying to identify what this team really looks at and really cares about. Like for me, like we've talked about already, like the pitching staff, especially the bullpen. The bullpen has got to be swing and miss. And offensively, I think they got to get back to making contact. And I think they know that, which there's a couple big free agent bats that I like, that everybody likes, that punch out 28, 30% of the time. And you're like, I know Teoscar is great and Adames is great, but I don't know if you've got the team. It depends on where else pieces you have to bring in another guy that strikes out 30% of the time. You got to make contact, and they know it.
So what's as far as the offense goes, I just wanted to loop back to this kind of. If the season started tomorrow, what is your ideal kind of setup for, I mean, we could say, I guess, the starting nine? Like, where do you ideally want them to end up by the end of the offseason?
I would say see, that's the thing. Like, I don't, in free agency, I don't know if that perfect left fielder exists. Like, I think Abreu will be traded. I think Cedar Rafaela could play the role of Mookie Betts and play right field because Duran can handle center. And really, when you look at the bats out in left field, the one guy that actually fits that people may not get too excited about, but I think the Red Sox liked him last year, and that's Jerickson Profar. And I don't know. He wants to stay in San Diego. He had one good year. I get it. But the guy, switch hitter, doesn't punch out and walks a ton. You know what I mean? I think that's, if you make some big drastic move and bring in a guy that can play third and Devers goes to first because you're moving Casas, that's where I do like the Arenado thing. Again, the guy plays defense. Like, we just feel like sometimes I get it. The Dodgers, they had 4 guys, but you give me 2 or 3 really like elite, great players. I think you got a couple in Duran and Devers and maybe even Casas. The rest of them, just make contact.
Where are you on trading Casas? Do you have it? Like, that was the one you didn't say.
Well, no, I do think that I'm a guy that would trade anybody. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So I'm not going to give him up.
No one is special.
No, I'm not giving up for Crochet because I don't think you have to. We're talking 2 years of control for a guy like Garrett Crochet. Now you start looking out in Seattle when he starts.
I saw Brian Wu. I saw
4 years
today,
of control, 5 years of control. Now you up the ante as far as what you'd have to give back, and hopefully it doesn't come to that because you make a trade for Crochet, you sign a big time free agent, and you still have Casas with Devers in your lineup as a monster. So I think ideally that would be the best scenario for them if they can just do that.
That's kind of where I every time the trading any of those guys or even the big 4 comes up, it's like, just spend some money and you can have both. You're the Red Sox. Like, you don't need to do this.
No,
it's very simple.
Right. And Jake, but here's the thing. The Mets say the same thing. Like, like I'm not buying they're going to get 2 of these guys. You know what I mean? But like we're sitting there saying, just sign Burns, Fried, and Snell. Okay, no big deal. Well,
not my money.
Would like to do it. The Yankees would
playing
like
MLB The Show.
You know what I mean? Like the Orioles probably want to bring one of these guys back. Like the Phillies, you never know. They could go at it too. Like the Dodgers. So it's like, just spend the money. Well, that's great. But it's not like if you decide to spend the money, you get them.
No, of course.
Like somebody else would be like, okay, we're going to spend the money too, but we'd rather come to New York. He's a West Coast guy. I'd rather go to LA. I'd rather go to San Diego. Like, so it's that's why I say, like, you just get one of them first so we can breathe a little bit. Somebody, Crochet trade somebody, and then start digging and trying to stay in it and get somebody else.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you might swing and miss. What if the Mets say, Burns, we want you, and all of a sudden the Orioles are like, well, we got to replace Burns. We're going to pay stupid money for free. And the next thing you know, Snell's like, I like the West Coast. I want to stay out in the West Coast. I'm going to go back to the Padres or whatever, right? And next thing you know, you're sitting there holding the you-know-what, and you're like, now what?
Your Pud. You can say it on the program here, your Pud. You can absolutely say it. Sorry for any of the children listening.
Lou, when you look at Devers long term,
Yeah.
even if they don't
the $300
move him-
million question.
yes, even if they don't move him off third this winter, which I still feel it's way too early to be having this conversation. Do you think he would welcome a move to first base, or he would rather be a full-time DH? Like, in terms of his mindset, I feel like he's a guy that needs to be engaged. I don't get the sense that if he's in the dugout for 3 hours every night, that would necessarily make his bat that much better. As people are saying he'd turn into like Yordan Alvarez, which I don't know.
No,
So-
actually, no. That's a tough transition for a lot of guys that have played every single day in the field. To all of a sudden only care about 4 at-bats. It can drive you fucking nuts, to be honest with you. Because, you go out there and punch out your first at-bat. Maybe you swing at the first pitch and you pop it up. You got 2 innings to think about, maybe being a little more patient. And then you go up there and you take a fastball down the dick. And you're like, now you start playing mind games with yourself.
Sure, you're overthinking it.
Yeah, and now you're 0 for 2, 0 for 3, and guess what? You can't go out in the field and make a great play. Like, big leaguers are like, listen, if I'm struggling in the field, I got to go out here and play defense, take a hit away. And then sometimes the great play changes your mindset, and now you go up there and you get a hit, right? And without that, you kind of can feel lost. So, when it comes to Devers at third, it's funny because I know the metrics say he sucked last year, but last year I thought he was pretty good. Like last
I thought he
year,
was fine.
Yeah.
That's all he really needs is fine. I don't need him to be a Gold Glover. Well,
I thought he was big league average last year at third. I thought he made some great plays. Did he?
Yes.
Every third baseman makes a dozen. And maybe the elites are less than that, but still,
Yeah.
I thought he played really well at third and got drastically better. Will he be there in 4 years? Probably not, but you can put him there again next year, the next couple.
I've always, when people propose Devers going to first, my thing is like, I don't know if I want him involved in more plays defensively a game.
First baseman touches the ball the most.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know if, how do we know that would even be better? I'm
think
not
he'd be fine.
fully. You
I
think
think
he'd
he'd be fine.
take to it?
Yeah, first off, like you're talking about, like I don't want him touching the ball. Well, he's going to catch the ball in the air. First
Yeah.
off, most of
Picks?
Who
Who knows?
I mean, here's the thing. Like to me, like he's got good hands. So I was like utility infielder my whole career, and in 2004 I went to Cleveland, and they said you're going to play first against lefties. Can you play first? I'm like, sure. Never played first in my life. And when I went over there,
Tell
and
him,
played
Wash.
first, it's like a guy that played corner infield or up the middle. I only had to figure out, it's some footwork around the bag, but which ball to go to, am I right or left? But I will tell you this. I felt like defensively there was no stress whatsoever, and all I can do was focus on hitting. Like it did. It wasn't challenging like short or third or second to me. Like it was just go because I could pick the ball, and he can pick the ball in the dirt. It's footwork. It's not easy. Like Ron Washington said in Moneyball, it's hard. But these guys are big leaguers. You play third base, you can go to first base. I have zero concern. I think he'd be pretty good over there, and maybe even stay healthier.
And again, it always seems like Devers, if he's going to biff a play, it's the one that you would see is more routine. He can make the tough play. I don't know if it's a matter of
Seen him make a spectacular play.
you got to tie his legs together before he goes into the field to make it harder for himself, so he goes full send on it, right?
Third base, he doesn't have much problem with range to his right down the line. That's where he actually makes plays. His ball's to his left, so that would be down the line at first. Now, you'd hope that he can maybe cover some ground there, and maybe take a double away. But it's not like you've got, Will Clark over there at first base or Rafi Palmeiro right now and Tristan Casas. So it's like, hopefully he can, maybe get to that ball over. I think he'd be fine. I think he'd be totally fine over at first base. Now we're a lot has to happen, for us to even get to that point.
I know. I'm not interested. I don't want to. I think this time to have this conversation, like it feels late on it. Like we have a good bat at first base. If we wanted to do this, like when Dahlbeck was striking out 400 times a year, maybe.
The other thing I would say about this, and
we could have talked about it then.
Buster only bring this up the other day, and I agree with him because I've been saying it as well, is that like you don't have to move Tristan. Tristan's an absolute beast. Not too many teams can develop a 3-4 hole hitter who's got 35, 40 home run potential, which is exactly what he does. He controls the zone, so there's a lot to like.
The plate approach I'm in love with. I don't want to throw that away.
There's a lot to like.
Get me fired up.
The fact that he has to apologize to umpires each time and say, like, hey, I'm sorry if I'm doing a better job than you, like, by saying it out loud. I don't mean any disrespect, but I'm just calling it a buck. But
I'll say this real quick, one last thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
But he needs to stay healthy.
Yeah.
And that's, I think, because, and this is sort of like the Marcelo Meyer of the big leagues, right? Like, you are one more year away from being a red flag. You know what I mean? Like
yes,
Myers got 4th year in the minor leagues coming up. Like, if it's another 90-game season, it's like, what are we doing here? And I think Casas is kind of, because it's not just the last 2 years. If you go look at his last 2 years in the minors, he played 75, 80 games. That's it. So it's like, can he play 145, 50 games? Because
that's a good comparison. I kind of am at the same place with, but like one more year and then it's
one more year
scary. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good. Well, also, Lou, you just said the 3-4 hitter kind of thing as far as Casas goes. Like, I think if you trade him, I just think a severe power outage as far as
where the home runs coming from.
I'm not sure where they're coming from. Point. Yeah, it's Devers and that's it, I guess.
You'd be replacing him with a guy that hopefully is hitting 25, right, in that range. Yeah. Whether it's like a guy like Adames or Bregman to maybe defense at third. Devers is at first. Maybe it's if it's Arenado, you hope he finds the power stroke again.
I think that's gone from that game.
Yeah, and maybe you're bringing in a guy like Teoscar. I don't. But you're gonna have to find it in multiple areas. A 25 home run guy at third. Maybe a Yoshida deal is moved, and you bring another 25 home run guy at DH. So it's because there's two things that are very important in today's game to me: making contact and hitting homers. You know what I mean? So
it's as simple as that.
Yeah, well, you got to thread the needle there.
Exactly.
Lou, let me ask you, since we're still talking lineup, do you care, as it's currently constructed, that it is so left-handed heavy? Like, do you care about lefty-righty?
Well, it's funny because, like, first off, I do think this year really affected them, because I just too many platoon guys. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, this guy's good against – you got to bench this guy against all these lefties. But what it did was it made Devers and Duran normal. Like, their OPSs were like 700 or 690 against lefties, so it neutralized them. You know what I mean? Turned them into below-average hitters every time you faced a lefty. But, if you want to get your whole lineup right-handed, now you can – some teams, dominate you 3 or 4 times through a rotation instead of just once when you face a lefty. You know what I mean? Yeah. I do like the balance. I think there was just a couple of guys, and we start thinking about Teal and Anthony and Meyer, all these lefties. It's like, where Christian Campbell comes in. So it's funny how if you take one lefty out and replace him with a righty everyday player, how all of a sudden you don't have a lefty.
We look good. Yeah, we look good.
That's why Teoscar, for me, slotting into DH feels like the most. Like, that feels so clean. Oh my! Like, it's just he can be your fourth outfielder and spell a guy, and then that to me feels like the best bat option.
But Lou, you said it. There's so many guys on the roster right now where I'm like, that's a good ball player, but in terms of a real contender, they're not everyday players. So, like, I think of like David Hamilton, obviously, like 30 stolen bases. That's massive. He would have had more if he hadn't gotten hurt. But I don't know if that's a guy that, for a legitimate first place team, you're running out there every day. Yeah.
No, not a starter. I don't think he is. I think that next year, that's the one good thing. Like, if you look at your bench and you have David Hamilton, Romy Gonzalez, and Rob Refschneider.
You're doing backfield. I love it. That's a solid bench. Yeah.
Fantastic. Because you got your base stealer, you got your guy Romy Gonzalez that can go out there and start, for a couple of weeks if somebody goes down. Hamilton in the right spot, mainly just probably at second base because I thought he really excelled there defensively.
Oh my God! If you take away his innings at short, he looks great at second.
Fantastic. So I think the other thing too is really the catcher situation, which people are kind of ignoring. But you got to get some help there defensively, I believe, and hopefully Connor can take another step, blocking, framing, because some of those metrics were really bad. But they need a backup guy. Whoever that's going to be. Higashioka, I don't know. So I like Darnell, but he's already gone. But that's another spot, that you have to clean up.
Do you, with the, I mean, I guess, we'll say the big four prospects. As far as team building for next season, and let's just say, I don't know if this will be the case, but let's say you trade none of them in the next 3 months. Yeah. Are you expecting any, and if yes, which of those guys to contribute on the major league roster next year, and like by like you think like midsummer, or what are we thinking there?
Yeah, I would say I expect Campbell to compete for second base job if everything's kind of stay the way they are, and have a really good shot of being your everyday second baseman to start. And simply because of the depth you have behind that position, if it doesn't work, you know what I mean? Like if April, May, you're like, holy shit, it's like, okay, now we're back to maybe Grissom is ready, maybe, and then David Hamilton, Romy Gonzalez. And with the idea that really Campbell will take the job or Grissom will take the job. So it's like you've got depth there. When it comes to Anthony, I don't want them to build an outfield with him starting their opening day. I want them to build a big league outfield. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? I want Duran. Rafaela seems kind of unmovable because of his contract. I don't think anybody's interested in that. And then, you bring back your big bat, whatever you might be in the outfield. And Anthony is a guy that let him go down there in April, have an extended spring in AAA.
Yep. 150 ABs in the minors or so. Yeah.
And then in May, like if he's tearing it up, there'll be an injury. And that's the beauty of a guy like Rafaela, right? Let's say Trevor Story gets hurt again. Let's say somebody at second gets hurt. What? Let's say any injury in the field, Rafaela goes to short. Rafaela goes to second, opens a spot in the outfield, right? So I think inevitably somebody will get hurt, or Roman Anthony just is tearing it up. You're forced to almost make a move, but it's nice. Like the Orioles, they have an injury. Who are you going to call up? Jackson Holloway, number one prospect in baseball. Yeah. Another injury. Who should we call up? Oh, I don't know. Westberg. I don't know. Cowser. Like they kept calling up these dudes left and right, which is where you could sit next year with those two.
Right. And it's interesting you bring that up because I do think you're onto something there. I feel like whether it's written pieces, not to say that these are bad or anything like that, or just discourse online or in person, people just sort of assume, oh, yeah, well, if you trade a Brillo, you just slot Anthony right in. No. And in the long term, yeah, absolutely. 100% he's part of the long-term plan. Slot him into one of the outfield spots going forward, set it and forget it. But for opening day, yeah, you're right. I don't think that Anthony would be, barring some extraneous circumstance that none of us foresee coming. Yeah, he's gonna have to take a little bit more time of seasoning.
And it goes about the depth, right? Like I mentioned, like if Campbell doesn't work, you got Grissom, you got Hamilton, you got Romy, you got Chase Mydroth. Jesus, you got 4 or 5 guys. Mydroth. Yeah, if Roman Anthony is handed right field and it doesn't work, you have Rob Refsnyder, okay? Yeah. Because there is nobody in AAA. Like that's not your depth. AAA outfield big leaguers aren't there other than Roman Anthony. You've got 3-4 guys that can play second base, including Cedar Rafaela. If you have a hole at second, I don't think you touch second base. You got 5 guys that can handle it if you take care of business in your other spots. You give Roman Anthony day one job and it doesn't work, or God forbid there's an injury, you really don't have anything in the minor league level. I want him to be that anything at the AAA level. I want him to be that guy when the inevitable happens and you need him.
Absolutely. And again, going back, it's you're talking about how you were told to platoon at first base in Cleveland. Like these experiences you have to inform the talking points that we see now. It's nice to have that insight to be able to sit here based off of those experiences that you had, hearing how that might apply to today. I think that's for a massive offseason for the Red Sox. That's wicked important to have, I think.
Well, it's interesting because they just have so many options. That's why I want to see what the first shoe to drop is, right? Like, they could go a million different ways.
I'm
really
scared.
Like, I'm scared. I don't know. And it's funny because, like, with every day, every national guy that comes out and is admitting that the Red Sox are in on everybody, right? And they're going to make a big move. They might sign 2 of these guys. And they make a big trade. With every day that comes out, I can feel the pressure building on Craig Breslow. You know what I mean?
I don't envy him. I don't envy him at all.
No,
like,
he can't whiff.
Since day one. Since day one. I was like, I don't envy that man.
Off. Like he has to. This is a huge winner. Very telling winner for him. Like people are expecting it. The national media is expecting it. Agents are expecting it. Maybe ownership is expecting it. You got to execute. You got to close. You got to, if you're in on this guy, you got to sign him. If you're in on this trade, you got to finish it. You know what I mean? Like, every day, man, there's some added heat on him to get something done here with all the expectations.
You thought that Full Throttle and that out the fallout of that was bad. If this kind of goes belly up, that could be because we mentioned Yeah, we've we've mentioned on the show, like, they have the facilities to spend now. Like, these guys that we keep talking about, these younger guys, your Anthony's, your Teals, Meyer, Campbell, all these guys that we project to be a part of the next great Red Sox team, or you know, leveraged to get guys who become a part of the next great Red Sox team. For the most part, they're under team control. Duran and Abreu, same deal. So they have the ability to go out and make these splurges. It's just a matter of
really 2016 all over again. It's like what Dave Dombrowski walked into.
Chills.
I
get chills thinking.
Well, I'm just saying maybe a better farm system. I mean, that needs to be played out. We'll see what these kids look like. But, you know, when you had Mookie Betts and you had guys like, you know, Devers coming up, and you had a system of Kopech and the Cuban kid, the big Moncada. But, you know, Benintendi, Jackie Bradley, you know, Xander was still in the house. So it was like, it's very similar to some of the young players you have in the big league team and those big prospects, you know, which is why they go over the threshold, you know, in my opinion, because they did back then as well, because they saw these young players pre-arbitration.
And I think the thing, you know, the hope this time and sort of why that all went south is like you hopefully allocate that money that you do have available right now just a little bit smarter. You know, that was like, because it all went belly up real quick. You know, you won the ring in 18, and then the next year they were tearing it down. You know, it was 1 year later.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's like,
Andrew Kashner at the deadline, baby.
I still can't believe how south the 2018 that team went, like, in a year, and it was all over.
Yeah,
and the offense still did their end of the bargain in 19.
Well, the offense was so good in 19.
Pitcher fell apart, and the next thing you know, you had extensions given that maybe weren't sort of the sale, and they just, I think at one point they just woke up and they were like, "Where is this thing going? Like, it's not going anywhere, right? Like, everybody's old, everybody's aging, contracts are coming up in a year or two, and you know, right or wrong, whether you agree or disagree, they move on for Mookie, and then all hell breaks loose. So they got a lot of heat on them this year, I think, especially Breslow, to get something done.
Just imagine if 21 hadn't happened.
No,
and we were sitting here right now.
That bought so many. That bought like 3-4 years of goodwill. I think. Like, I can't even imagine.
Yeah. So we're coming up on the last year of goodwill from 21.
21 was sort of like just like 2013, right? But you didn't.
Yeah, lightning in a bottle.
Yeah, it was an accident. It was
well, you unload all this money to the Dodgers. You get under the luxury tax. 2013, you stay under the luxury tax. You just spend it differently, right? All these little short-term deals for veterans. And it was supposed to just sort of make you competitive. No, I don't know if they ever thought they would win a World Series, because there would have been a run of 12, 13, 14, 15 where you're like, holy shit. Very similar to the last 4 years while they waited for that 16 crew, 15, 14 crew in minor leagues to build up, which is where they're at now. But yeah, 13 is just like 21. Magical little ride. It ended better in 13, but 21, that was a blast. Got to get back.
It was. I
it was
still
so
can't
much
believe,
fun.
I know. What's your favorite team that you've covered, I guess, Lou?
That's a great question.
What do you mean? As far as, like, I just covered the Red Sox. Like, I've never.
No, like, what year, I mean. Like, which season? That you had the most fun. I guess throw out the 2 champions, because I feel like that would be a layup, right?
I would say, like, so I started calling games in 2013. You know,
okay, so that was I was trying to figure out exactly which year.
So that was like my first year calling games on the radio. So I mean, it's tough to beat 13 and 18. You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Because they were just 13 was probably more fun. It was just a different dude. You know, older guys like in Napoli's and your Johnny Gomes and Victorino's, Dempster in the house, and you go get Jake Peavy. I would say 2013, maybe because you always remember your first. But
that's beautiful.
2018 was an absolute juggernaut, you know, and that's the other thing too to remind. I was just talking about this with a buddy of mine because it's like, you know, I think some people, I get people tweeting all the time, you know, I want Snell, I want Burns, I want Teoscar, I want Soto, I want Scott, I want Hoffman. I'm like, anyone else, you know, and like 2018 wasn't built overnight, right? It was Kimbrel and Price, couldn't get it done. It was Chris Sale. Couldn't get it done. It was JD Martinez 3 years in a row.
Steve Pierce. They
still couldn't get it done if it wasn't for Nate Eovaldi and Steve Pierce. So it's like,
one of the the
Mitch
best
Moreland's,
trade deadline
right?
anyone's ever had. Dombrowski that year.
Yeah, the point is like, I get it. I want it right now. Like, I just want to get to the postseason. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And then for the next 2 or 3 years, find that missing hole, because if you
12 teams make it now. You tell me you can't get in 12 teams.
If you sign that one ace, get that like the next pitcher that people aren't crazy about, or a couple relievers, and maybe one of them's not crazy about, or the bat you're not crazy about. It's like, okay, go play 162, maybe not win the World Series, but then identify another hole, right, and fill that. And sometimes that takes 2 or 3 years, but there's no reason not to be back into the playoffs next year, given some of the names that you're hearing that they may be in on.
Mm-hmm.
It has to
They
be
scored the
goal line.
9th most runs in baseball last year.
Yeah.
Like, they don't need to,
Dying stretch too. Yeah.
Yeah, oh my God.
exactly. September was horrible. I've said that way too many years in a row, by the way. September was horrible.
Well, they just grind it. That's the thing. Like, they're out of bullets, man. And it's like, that's why they've been screaming the last few years. Like, we need help. We need help. Because Jared Duran, 160 games. Like, the end of the year, they struggled because Casas wasn't right. He got hot for 2 weeks, and after that, he kind of
Devers was completely busted.
Devers was
busted. Yeah, once he hurt his shoulder in Colorado, like,
it
wasn't the same.
I couldn't believe they kept running. I mean, I don't know how much of it was him or AC or what, but like, he looked so awful in like early September. I was like, that's not even a major league bat.
No, and O'Neill too was another one, right?
Yeah.
So like, but if you're core, you're like, listen, if we're gonna do this, then Devers, O'Neill, and Casas have to all of a sudden wake up one morning, feel awesome, and start raking. So we
have to be a part of it.
This is the only shot we got. We can't. We're not. How far are we gonna go if we bench Devers and put Romy out there, and then if we bench him and we put Sogard at third and Romy out left for O'Neill? Like, how far are we really gonna go? The only shot we have is these guys just finding it.
And then at the same time, you got everybody not named Chris Martin is throwing batting practice out of the bullpen.
I'll tell you, if Slayton hadn't gotten hurt in the middle of the year, man.
Yeah, Slayton and Martin. That was it.
Yeah, it was both of them. Had you ever seen anything like the bullpen's performance the last 2 months of the year? They were last in almost every single pitching statistic.
Yeah, and it was it was bad the last month too, but nothing was like those 2 weeks
coming right out of the deadline.
Out of the All-Star break.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Oh my God.
That series out in LA. Yeah,
LA was like, you should have won 2 out of 3 in LA. Colorado, you should have won games out there, and it just kept going, and then at the deadline, it was like, and I think everybody kind of liked the moves at the deadline, the profile of these guys, but they came in and they jumped right in like they were part of the group because they
I know. It was so bad. It was LA, Colorado, and then what was do you guys remember it was 3 series in a row that it was a catastrophe. And it was like, well, there's your season. Yeah, because they were like 2 games
didn't
Oh,
they come back
I think
after
coming
that
out of the break.
When the Yankees were at Fenway too.
Yeah.
There was
they
another
just asked
one.
a lot of and I still believe in Zach Kelly's stuff. Hopefully gain some experience and maybe and come into the year because that stuff is fantastic. They just asked so much of him, so much of so many guys like rookies. You're like,
I mean, Weiser when he came back from Worcester towards the end of the season looked like
money.
I don't know. I guess April and May Weiser. So
and even if they're just not so much depth bullpen pieces, but if they can be contributors to something greater going forward, like as bad as the bullpen was in the second half of the year, you could still take solace in the fact that there are still some solid pieces already within the organization that can be supplemented, by if they go out and acquire a reliever, whether it's through free agency or through a trade.
And I was seeing too that like pretty much with the news of Criswell having like an extra option here, like pretty much all those guys have like options left, right? So you build a bullpen, you throw 8 guys out there, and because you acquire 2 or 3, then all of a sudden you look down at Worcester, and it's not great for the players. You know what I mean? Because I was one of them. But it's not great for the players, but it's great for the team. Like if Cora and those guys in Breslow can sit there and say, holy shit, we got these 3 dudes that were in our bullpen last year down in AAA. So if somebody goes down or if somebody sucks, we make the switch. Maybe, like you said, you get a guy hot for a couple of months, and you can play that game, which is a game they really haven't been able to play in some time. Actually having like legit guys down in AAA, and they might have 3 or 4 starters down in AAA, that they like. They may have 3 or 4 relievers down in AAA that they like, which is huge.
The Woo Sox are stacked to start the year. That's a damn good team. Yeah. You got all 4 of the big guns on offense, and then I really like Hunter Dobbins. I know they protected him. Mm-hmm. I think he could be a guy as well. Dick Fitz.
Yeah, those guys down there. Fitz, Priester, Sandlin's coming too.
Priester, oh my God.
You keep forgetting about Priester.
I know, I forgot about him too.
The Sandman, we might have some real depth next year.
Yeah.
It's never enough.
The
It's
sun
never
might
enough.
shine
Never
upon us
enough.
again, though, man.
It will
does-
never.
It does feel like it's getting, and maybe this is just hopium for me. It does feel like there is a dawn coming upon the horizon here.
The sun
it
is
looks like
shining on
a
us.
better
The
day is
window's
ahead of us.
open. The windows. Cora said it during the season. What do you say? The window is a door, something
Yeah.
like that. Yeah, like
Well,
that.
I
That's
think,
how I feel
you know,
this off season is.
And the
You
ceiling
are-
is the roof.
I would say like the window is open. Is it like a real championship window right now? I don't know. We'll see. It depends on what they do. But yeah, the question is how long does it last? You know, it doesn't.
Mhm.
I know people talk about sustainability. Like I don't know if there's such a thing. You know, you have to keep kind of doing it through the draft because you know as good as this team is right now, at some point 3 or 4 years down the road, contracts are up, and you might lose Durant because he wants money. He's 33. You know, so it's all cyclical. But if you keep building through the draft and getting a player or two coming up, contracts you stagger them, yes. But right now, depending on what you do the next 2 months, you got a shot of being really good here the next 3, 4, 5 years.
That's the whole game. You know, it's the sustainable winner. That was
Yeah.
the whole. Going back to Heim.
We're so warped with what sustainability means. I bet people in Boston, we all just think it's 20 years.
Yeah, it's gonna be the Pats.
Yeah, it's Belichick and Brady. You're supposed to win for the next 20 years, and if you don't, you guys suck.
You
Right.
simply have your franchise player take team-friendly deals consistently,
All the
and you trade for superstars on for pennies on the dollar. Duh, you know what I mean? And then they break records together. One of the last things I wanted to mention, Lou, tonight, first year you're going into the first year in the booth without Joe Castiglione in there. How's Joe doing? Have you been in talks with him this offseason? How's our king?
I was actually just talked to him. I texted him because I was looking for an address for a buddy. I think he's still down in Florida. He's doing good. It was funny because the last game he did, he was talking about how this is his final game on a regular basis.
Yeah, because he'll pop in every now and again.
He's going to be down in Florida, popping in for the Rays games. He's going to, join us in Baltimore or Kansas City or wherever it may be, right? So I still think he's going to find his way into 25 to 35 games or something like that. I don't think you can get away from it.
Can't get rid of him that easy.
But he's doing well. He's going to miss it. It's going to be a tough year. You know what I mean? We've done something like that for so long, as he has, and it's such a part of your life. I think it'll be hard. But then again, he's earned it. He and Jan kind of hang out and relax, and the booth. We'll see where it goes from there.
I thought it was so funny he had Jackie come
of course.
catch it.
Oh.
That was
He
so
catches
good.
everything.
I was so excited when he popped out of the dugout. I was
Yeah.
loving that.
Yeah.
Can you give us any one or two good Castig stories for us here, just at any time, anything that comes off the dome?
Well,
I'm a sucker for a good Castig.
The best part
Anecdote.
about Castigs is the passion for it is still there. Like it's awesome to see, and because on the game, the famous, swing and a pop up, right? You can
Swing
tell
and a
how the Red
pop-up.
Sox are doing by his voice. And there's times, obviously, when this offense goes south, and it's like bases loaded, nobody out, and it's been going on for a while. Man on third, nobody out. Man on third, one out, we can't get him in. So like he'll be doing a game, I'll be doing it with him, and it's bases loaded, nobody out, and he's like, "Lily, gotta get a hit, gotta score runs. It's a problem." And all of a sudden, somehow, infield fly ball, pop up, ground ball, double play, they don't score a run. So you just hear it in his voice, right? And he throws it to break. WEI, Shaw's and Star Market, Red Sox Radio Network,
That's right.
And you can hear the commercial. The headset goes off. He looks at me and he's like, "We can't freaking score." And he gets animated between breaks. Like he's yelling at me.
That makes my day. I would love nothing more than to know that, like, swinging a pop, in the Shaw's and Star Market, WEI, Red Sox
Throws
Radio
that.
Network goes,
Like,
son
what
of
the
a
fuck,
fucking
guys?"
bitch, I'm going to jump out of this window.
Yeah.
God damn it.
Or to be honest with you, sometimes it's like we call for the pitching change because somebody just gave it up for the 17th time in a row. And the headset comes off, and he's like, "This guy stinks."
This guy's a fucking bomb. That's
He's
awesome.
like, he can't get anybody out. So you hear it between breaks, man. It's so funny. I just laugh my ass off because he cares so much. He wants them to win so much. And when they don't, the headset comes off, and he starts yelling at me, whatever. It's great.
Because it's your fault, Lou. Come on. You got to take it out on you.
Did you guys know in the about Castig, he in the 04 doc that just came out. Did you watch it,
Yep.
Lou?
Yep.
You watched it.
Yep.
I did not know that the Billy Miller walk off Mo was the first time he dropped "Can You Believe It."
Me neither.
That was he. Yeah, that was a
Oh.
little fun. That was a little fun factoid. He
Yeah.
dropped on that. Lou,
Yeah.
I have two final questions for you.
Go ahead.
One, where did Sweet Lou come from? Who coined Sweet Lou?
I think if your name is Lou, someone's eventually going to call you Sweet Lou.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like, 'cause
It
to
just
me,
yeah.
Sweet
One of those
Lou,
things.
like to me, I grew up. Sweet Lou is Sweet Lou Whitaker. Like that's who Sweet Lou was to me. Like Sweet Lou Whitaker. So I just think when you're Lou, and people just
You weren't like
well, I'm playing
particularly
baseball. I'm playing
sweet.
shortstop. I'm picking stuff as a young kid, in high school,
Yeah.
college, and it's like sweet Lou. So people started calling me Sweet at times, but man of many nicknames. I don't know.
Okay.
Different one.
And then so just kind of as a cap to the offseason talk, if you wake up tomorrow and you can do whatever you want this offseason, throw out like the bidding wars or whatever, you come away, what is your beautiful perfect offseason this team realistically can have? Like what's the moves
And like I said,
CBO
I
Lou makes?
think a lot does hinder on the Crochet trade, acquiring him. Because then you sit there and say, okay, you got one through trade. You go after one of the other big three and your rotation's loaded.
Yep.
1A, 1B to me in the bullpen is like Jeff Hoffman and Tanner Scott. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
I think you need kind of a couple of adults out there. And
Yeah, you think they definitely need two of the bigger signings
offensively,
for back
like it's weird. Like I don't know if that free agent exists. Like Teoscar will be nice. Don't get me wrong. You know what I mean? But I just don't know if it exists. And I'll tell you what. You know what the biggest gift could possibly be is Sasaki.
Oh, have we not even mentioned him?
I haven't
yeah.
even. I don't.
Yeah.
That's so fun.
just
It's
saying,
like
and
he's a
that's the-
dog.
It's like it's
I
after
don't.
it's into the new year. I'm like, that's
Well,
years from now.
But it's so like it's such a gift. Like it's free. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like somebody just handed you the best pitching prospect in all of baseball at AAA, and you have him under control for 6 years, and you didn't have to give anything up to get him other than like a couple $1,000,000. You know what I mean? Like whoever gets him, and if it's the Dodgers, I'm going to puke. But it probably will be. But
I got some bad
whoever
news.
It's such a gift. If you're the Red Sox, you would have the best pitching prospect and the best positional player prospect in your system for the next 6 years. Like it is franchise altering. Now the Angels couldn't do anything with it, but you think about the deal they had for Ohtani for 6 years, the face of baseball for 6 years, free agency, pre-arbitration, $750,000 year one, $1 million.
Well, I don't want to take any pointers from the Angels. Let's.
But Sasaki is probably just the gift. You get this guy, he decides to come to you. Free agency hasn't even started yet, and you're winning. You know what I mean? But I do think a lot hinges because if you just get like Burns, Fried, Snell, you're obviously a lot better baseball team. But it's like who do you pair him with? My guy Yusei Kikuchi, the pair with one of those two is gone. But it's like who do you pair him with? If you paired him with a guy like Crochet, hello, like good night.
Yeah. What would be your pitch as CBO Lou to Sasaki to convince him to shun the Dodgers, shun the Yankees or the Mets or any other team that might be in the mix?
Well, I'd have to go to my marketing company and try to show them that we're going to create your own market and you're not going to be sitting on Ohtani and Yamamoto's shoulders the whole time. Like you're the guy on the East Coast. Let them have the West Coast. Boston is yours. Daisuke's in the house. He's coming and visiting. The Red Sox do have a lot of trainers and things like that speak Japanese, the Japanese. So, I mean, there's a lot of ties here, you know what I mean, for him. And again, away from the LA, you're the third best Japanese player on that team. And you might be the third best Japanese player in the world. And you're on one team. Do you always want to be in those shadows?
I hate that. I hate it so much.
You know what I mean? Or do you
I
want
get so
to
pissed.
be your own man? You know what I mean? I don't know. Challenge is manhood.
Call him a pussy if he doesn't sign with the Red Sox. Coward, you won't sign with the Sox, rookie.
Whatever it takes.
That's the Sweet Lou difference.
Yeah,
Is he?
whatever it takes.
What's the time frame on society? It's later, right?
January
the
15th.
window doesn't. Yeah, the window
looks
opens
Oh, okay.
in January.
Yeah. If they were going to post him December 1st, it would be like the 2024 money, where most teams could give most teams could give him is $22 million. So if he waits till January 15th, then it goes into next year's international pool money. I think the top is 7.5. Red Sox around 6.5. So he can get more money there, but
Okay.
yeah.
So
I like that
got?
pitch though.
Or-
Number one position prospect, number one pitching prospect.
That would be it.
Love that.
Chills, giving
That
me
would be it.
chills.
I mean, and it's a gift. And then, like I said, then you could still go do all the things we're talking about. You can still go get crochet. You can still
Yeah, that's like not
That's
even
not
a blip
prohibitive.
as far
Yeah.
as money. It's like, oh yeah, it's
They're giving
Drop the
Whitlock
bucket.
like $6.5 million next year. Like,
Yeah, you can do it all. It'd be beautiful. Beautiful. Well, we got to
Beautiful.
get something to drop here soon, though.
Yeah, need that. We're starving here. And if
Yeah.
the off season does go to shit, if none of this actually happens, we'd love to have you come back on for a big venting session and invite Joe Castiglione on there too, because clearly he'll be frustrated about it.
100%. If they do absolutely nothing, and my wife's going to be searching for me to go talk.
well,
to
Lou, we'll have you back even if they don't have if they
I'm in.
do something.
I'm
We
in.
don't.
Yeah.
We'll have you both ways. Yeah.
Yeah, we'll talk
We'd love
again. We're in.
Love it. Lou Maloney, again, thank you so much for your time, man. We really appreciate it.
Anytime.
Thank you so much, Lou.
thanks, Lou.
You got it. You got it.
And stream.